He will have his knee checked out tomorrow with an MRI, and it's his knee, and I think, we'll have to wait and see.
I've never seen anything like that.
Rashod Rice.
Your own quarterback.
Going into the season, the Kansas City Chiefs could have never expected that their starting 2 wide receivers and their starting halfback would all be out for an extended period of time following the 4th week of the NFL season. But here we are. The good news is that the Kansas City Chiefs are currently undefeated, but there's a tough road ahead, and there's a lot of questions on how they're going to resolve these issues. And to be fair, there isn't direct success for the Kansas City Chiefs historically whenever they needed to fix a problem such as this. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help us get to 1 million subscribers. And now that we get all that out of the way, we made over $500 this past weekend by playing Prize Picks. I posted both of my picks before Sunday and Monday Night Football on my Instagram story at The Flight Mike. If you aren't signed up for Prize Picks, use my promo code Mikerophone to get a free $50 when you place an entry of $5 or more. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Do you guys remember how a few months ago we were talking about the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver core as possibly the greatest wide receiver core that Patrick Mahomes has ever had in the post Tyreek Hill era? I mean, it's kind of crazy if you think about it. We were memeing the Buffalo Bills for allowing the Kansas City Chiefs to trade up with them so they could select Xavier Worthy. Why the Bills would help the team that is solely responsible for keeping them out of the Super Bowl in the Josh Allen era, I have no idea. But everybody found it quite comical that the Bills would do it. But that's not all the Kansas City Chiefs would do. They would take a flyer on Marquise Hollywood Brown, a player that went for over 1,000 yards receiving in his last fully healthy season with the Baltimore Ravens, and has also had very solid seasons with the Arizona Cardinals whenever Kyler Murray was healthy. But for additional insurance, the Kansas City Chiefs decided to bring back a familiar face. The moment they found out that the New England Patriots cut Juju SmithSchuster, they also decided to sign him right before the season started. Juju helped the Kansas City Chiefs win a Super Bowl, so it really just made too much sense for them to bring him back, especially when you don't have to pay him very much to do so, especially when there's familiarity with Andy Reid's offense. This is going to sound a little crazy, but the Kansas City Chiefs at a particular point felt like they had way too many wide receivers. And what I mean by that is 1 month ago, the Kansas City Chiefs decided to release Kadarius Toney just 2 years after trading for him in the middle of the season, which is very significant, and we're going to have to discuss a little bit more in depth later, because this video is about the Chiefs eventually making a big trade at a particular point this season. But right before the season would start, the Kansas City Chiefs would get some unfortunate news. Hollywood Brown suffered a sternoclavicular injury during the preseason, and as a result was placed on injured reserve. He's expected to return at some point in the regular season, but obviously this isn't something that the Chiefs were hoping for. Fortunately, they have Juju SmithSchuster already on the roster, who occupies somewhat of a similar role and had familiarity with Andy Reid's offense already, but obviously it meant that Xavier Worthy and Rashod Rice were going to be dependent on a little bit more. Things would get even worse for the Kansas City Chiefs as Isaiah Pacheco would suffer an injury that's sidelining him for another 8 weeks. Fortunately for the Kansas City Chiefs, Rashod Rice continued where he left off. As a matter of fact, he was the second best fantasy wide receiver so far this year, up until game 4 of this regular season. In one of the craziest cases of sabotage I think I've ever seen, Patrick Mahomes throws an interception that was intended for Rashod Rice, and as he's trying to make a tackle, he actually tears Rashod Rice's ACL, which has to be the worst feeling ever for an NFL QB of all time. I mean, not only do you throw an interception, but you injure your wide receiver one to go with it. It really sucks, man, because Rashod Rice was balling out. He continued where he left off in his rookie season. He was definitely on track for a 1,000 plus yard receiving season, and without a doubt is the Kansas City Chiefs' best receiver since they had Tyreek Hill.
No, I'm not saying he's the next coming of Tyreek Hill,
but he's been the most consistent and reliable for the Chiefs since Tyreek Hill. I hope he comes back from the ACL injury strong, man. It really sucks whenever this happens to a player that is on an upward trend, and it's just been a storyline for the Chiefs so far this year. Yes, they're undefeated. They're 4-0 so far this year, and yes, you can make an argument that in each and every game of this season, there was one key play that resulted in them winning the game. Whether it was Isaiah Likely having his foot out of bounds in week 1, or the extremely close PI call in week 2, and of course, the pass interference no call on Kyle Pitts in week 3. And I'm not trying to say, oh my God, the refs are trying to help the Chiefs, because I've made a short discussing that the call that was made in the Bengals game was the right call at the end of the day. I made plenty of reels on Instagram and on TikTok discussing how the refs suck. We never back away from how bad the refs are. I try to bring that to your attention quite often and quite frequently. What I'm trying to say here is it's not like the Chiefs are dominating their opponents currently. They're winning games, but it's not in a dominant fashion. I mean, they beat the Bengals by 1 point. They beat the Falcons by 5. These are all games that they won by a touchdown. And they are 4-0, and they definitely can figure it out, but clearly it's not coming from a place of dominance. They're not dropping 40 points on their opponents consistently. Their defense isn't as formidable as it was last year, and their offense was something that they invested in heavily this past offseason, but with the injuries that are piling up, there's obviously cause for concern. Well, the Chiefs have addressed some of these issues. I mean, they decided to bring back Kareem Hunt to fill in the void that Isaiah Pacheco left behind, which was a cool nostalgia moment for a lot of us, except for Xavier Worthy. This is going to make us all feel old, so just a warning.
Are you old enough to remember when he was with the Chiefs the last time around?
Nope.
But in regards to Rashod Rice, it's obviously not looking good. This is what Andy Reid has to say about Rashod.
As far as Rasheed's injury goes, we're still testing him on things here, but so I don't have a definite for you right now, but we will get it to you. And he's not going to be available, obviously, this week. So we're going to make sure we get all the tests that need to be done, and then we'll let you know on that. So,
in my time in the NFL, we always knew an ACL tear by exam. MRI was perfunctory, and quickly the next morning would be the confirmation and end of season. The fact that that hasn't happened yet is actually good news. Not saying he's going to play this week. He's not, but it leaves a glimmer of hope open for the season. Here's why. By video, we didn't see distinct ACL tear. We couldn't rule it out. We worried about a bone bruise and a posterolateral corner sprain. Is that what it is? Is it a worse bone bruise with small fracture? Is it a partial ACL? It remains to be seen, but at least there is some hope that it may not be season ending. We'll keep our fingers crossed. And by the way, swelling does not prohibit an MRI and the diagnosis. Swelling helps the MRI. It's like a form of contrast. The MRI detects fluid and water levels, and so the MRI is clear. The exam and what to do may not be, which gives us, fingers crossed, some hope on Rashod Rice.
So this is bringing us all to the point of the video. What do the Kansas City Chiefs do here? Well, obviously, everybody's expecting them to do what they've done in years past. The Kansas City Chiefs have always been aggressive whenever it's come to acquiring talent in the middle of the season. It could be either from the trade market or even signing a high-profile name. If you guys remember 2 years ago, the Kansas City Chiefs decided to swing a mid-season trade for Kadarius Toney. A little bit before that, the Chiefs took a flyer on Le'Veon Bell, and even before that, the Chiefs have taken a flyer on a player like Kelvin Benjamin in Patrick Mahomes' first full season under center. So as a result, the Chiefs are expected to swing a trade for any wide receiver that could potentially be available. So who is the top target for the Kansas City Chiefs in this instance? Well, I would say the dream scenario for the Chiefs is without a doubt Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper has had one of the most unique careers I think I've ever seen a wide receiver have, in the sense that he's never really had that incredible top 3 elite type of quarterback. Yes, even when Dak Prescott was his QB in Dallas. But the thing is, he's been able to produce no matter what. Whether it was when Derek Carr was his QB in Oakland or Dak Prescott as his QB in Dallas. But more impressively, whoever was under center during his time with Cleveland, he's always been able to make it work out. Whether it's whatever the hell Deshaun Watson currently is, or Jacoby Brissett, or really anyone under center. He's always always put together 1,000 plus receiving seasons. But now that he's in his age 30 season, fans are wondering if it even makes sense to keep Amari Cooper. His contract is set to expire after this year, so if the Browns aren't interested in bringing him back or franchise tagging him, then obviously it makes sense to trade him. The Browns also converted his salary into signing bonus, so as a result, his contract is very tradable. The Browns are also currently 1-3 on the season, so if they want to punt on the season, they might as well trade Amari Cooper. That's probably the dream scenario for the Kansas City Chiefs, because it's not going to take too much to get yourself Amari Cooper. The proposed trade from FanDuel is Amari Cooper and a 7th round pick for a 3rd round pick and a 5th round pick. And I know this might not sound like the most enticing trade package, but you have to remember, the Browns didn't really need to trade that much to get Amari Cooper. Believe me, I remember this because I was livid at this trade at the time that it happened. Amari Cooper was traded to the Cleveland Browns for a 5th round pick and a swap of 6th round pick. But you not only got 2 seasons of Amari Cooper getting you 1,000 plus receiving yards, but you also get a better draft pick as a result of it. It's a win-win in my opinion, and Patrick Mahomes gets himself a brand new wide receiver 1. But let's say Amari Cooper doesn't work out, well, other options that I personally like are DeAndre Hopkins, who obviously isn't the DeAndre Hopkins of old, but he is a veteran wide receiver that could potentially learn Andy Reid's offense relatively quickly and could provide some relief at the wide receiver position. Another wide receiver that I personally think is very interesting really depends on when Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua comes back, but maybe the Rams are willing to part ways with Demarcus Robinson, who also played for the Kansas City Chiefs earlier on in his career, so there's familiarity in that offense. The problem that no one's talking about here is the fact that the Chiefs have done this before. They did it with Kadarius Toney, they did it with Kelvin Benjamin, and the biggest issue when you're trading for a wide receiver in the middle of the season is that Andy Reid has a very complex playbook and intricate concepts that make it very difficult for a brand new wide receiver being acquired in the middle of the season to adapt to, which plays a huge role in this situation. I mean, maybe DeAndre Hopkins can grasp the playbook relatively quickly, or maybe Amari Cooper can as well, but historically, you never see a wide receiver switch teams in the middle of the season and have an immediate impact so quickly, except maybe when the Cowboys traded for Amari Cooper when he gained 725 receiving yards in 9 games. That was insanity, but that's like the dream scenario typically. And also, that's when Jason Garrett's your head coach, not necessarily Andy Reid. And I'm just going based off of track record. I mean, you look at Kadarius Toney, and Kadarius Toney didn't really have a good first season with the Kansas City Chiefs. He played in 7 games, only came down with 14 receptions for 171 receiving yards. And the craziest part is he gained less receiving yards on twice as many receptions last year, which explains why he was let go. But a receiver like DeAndre Hopkins in this particular instance makes a lot of sense. He went for over 1,000 receiving yards last year. It'll give him an opportunity to chase that elusive Super Bowl, and I personally love the fit. He hasn't really done much for the Tennessee Titans this year either. He played in 3 games, and he's only been targeted 10 times. It'll probably take way less to get him than to get yourself Amari Cooper. So let me know in the comment section down below, especially if you're a Chiefs fan, how do they solve this problem? Because in my opinion, I think the best option for them here is to elevate Xavier Worthy's role and try to get Sky Moore involved a little bit more. Either way, they have to do something, but if history's any indication, they usually handle this correctly. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.